Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Today is March the 31st, 2020. Let's talk boxing. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now understand, I'm biased toward underdogs, just in general. In fact, I believe most successful gamblers are. In the professional ranks, I believe most fighters are closer than people think. Right? You see two tough guys at a bar, if they were to go into the back alley and have a brawl, right, the favorite might win 60% of the time. But yet, when we bet on boxing, men who are professionals somehow are 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 underdogs. Right? Understand what a 3-to-1 line means. It means that if the guys fought 4 times, the line's telling you that the favorite would be expected to win 3 of the 4. Right? The other guy would only win 1 of the 4. Now, the line on the Dillian Whyte Alexander Povetkin fight is mispriced, in my opinion. Right? Povetkin right now is going off at better than a 3-to-1 underdog. Folks, it makes no sense. I don't care where the fight is. These two guys are evenly matched. Even though Dillian Whyte is younger than Povetkin by several years, Povetkin is one of the worst people in boxing for a fighter with Dillian Whyte's style to fight. Let's talk about the styles. Right now, Dillian Whyte is a guy who has one of boxing's best jabs. He can riddle you with the jab. Whyte also is excellent at mixing in body shots. When you look at the tapes, his body work stands out. In other words, he stuns you with the jab. When you re-enter the pocket and you're mindful of the jab, in other words, you've been hit with that stick enough times where you come in and you're, ready to protect your head, ready to move your head out of the way. Dillian Whyte, and it's the reason why he's an elite fighter, is able to then pivot and hit you to the body. So you're getting worked. Right? Dillian Whyte's home is in the pocket. Right? The kind of fighter who would give a Dillian Whyte, who doesn't move that well, who isn't a great athlete, who, like Povetkin, ironically, has tested positive for PEDs in the past, who has come into some fights looking sluggish, who is faded in some fights. Right? In the 12th round of his fight against Joseph Parker, I would have rather have been Parker than Dillian Whyte. Right? Dillian Whyte looks like he's out of gas in that round. When he gets dropped, wow, he barely survives that fight. Right? Dillian Whyte's not a great athlete. What he is a technician. And by that I mean he has the superior jab. He knows how to fight. He knows how to drop the body shots on you. He knows how to beat you in the punch when you're in the pocket with him. He can outbox you. Right now, what I want people to realize is there's a whole group of fighters out there who don't allow a pocket to be formed. They're ambush type fighters. These are fighters who come in and they're either too long for you to reach them. Think Shakur Stevenson. Right? They're too long for you to reach them. They're taller than you. They have a lot of ring coverage. They can throw punches from what seems to be outside the pocket while they're engaging with you. Then you have movers. Isn't that the whole point of moving? To turn you. To have the pocket reform. To move the pocket so that it's not defined. So that a Dillian Whyte who doesn't move that well, who doesn't have that great a stick, can't land the jab. Right? A guy who moves, a lateral mover, a guy who can slip to the outside, have you turn, hit you with shots, move away from you. Right? That kind of fighter would have an upper hand on Dillian Whyte. So too would an Alexander Povetkin ambush fighter. You know the guy. Sergio Martinez was an ambush fighter. I hear he's coming back. You know the guy. He's outside. He's too far away from you. David Haye, ambush fighter. He's outside. He's too far away from you. Then he comes in. He enters the pocket with combinations. Right? You can't hit him with your jab on a regular basis because the guy is too outside. He's not fighting you for 3 minutes of every round. There's no pocket for huge portions of the round. Right? And then the guy appears, jumps out the bushes, comes in, riddles you with shots. Right? You have to play defense first. That's who Povetkin is. Now only 2 guys have beaten Povetkin. Right? There's also the draw. We'll talk about that. The 2 guys who've beaten Povetkin are practically the same fighter. Right? They're 2 of the heaviest handed guys in the heavyweight division in recent memory. And of course, they had power in both hands. One was Vladimir Klitschko. Now Klitschko goes hunting Povetkin. Right? The other is Anthony Joshua. Joshua, in my opinion, was in serious trouble. Right? Povetkin busts up his mouth. Povetkin wins most of the early rounds. I know that's not how it scored. Whatever. Fight was in Joshua's backyard. Boxing has a political component that you have to peel away. Right? A lot of people out there want to see a box office king win fights because, of course, that rising tide lifts all the people in the boxing ecosystem associated with the fight. Right? But in my opinion, Joshua was in trouble because Joshua didn't have the hand speed to deal with Povetkin's flurries. He couldn't match Povetkin on hand speed. Joshua, as I like to say here, is big and clunky. And Joshua didn't have Vladimir Klitschko's level of experience when Klitschko fought Povetkin. Right? Klitschko seemed to be born with a great jab. Joshua was just figuring out how to have a great jab. Klitschko, the things that don't show up on a punch stat sheet. Klitschko was much better at dictating pacing and spacing than Anthony Joshua is. Right? We'll see how much better when Joshua fights a guy Klitschko KO'd, Kubrat Pulev. Well, let me just say this. The Joshua fight's fascinating because I thought Povetkin gets off the runway cleanly. Fast start. He's the one dictating the action. The fighters are engaging when Povetkin wanted to engage. But then Joshua, as I said before, huge puncher with both hands. This is a different kind of power than Deontay Wilder has. Understand, heavy-handed guys like Klitschko and Joshua can shorten their punches. They can throw bombs as counters. Right? Povetkin jumped in, should have varied the angle more in the middle of the Joshua fight and gets caught by a very short right hand from Anthony Joshua. Life changes. This is boxing. A big hitter hits you with a big hit, you might never get your balance back. The fight's practically over from that point forward. Understand, Dillian Whyte, in my opinion, is not that level of puncher. Right? Joshua and Klitschko, that's a different level of power. That's the kind of power where you get hit the wrong way early in the fight, it's over. Dillian Whyte himself knows that. He got hit that way by Anthony Joshua. Right, let me point out, Joshua beat both of these guys. He's hunting Dillian Whyte. I thought Dillian Whyte had an excellent first round before he seems to have gotten injured. Then Joshua starts hunting him. Right, Joshua hits Povetkin on an ambush with a short counter. And Povetkin's pretty much done. I don't believe Dillian Whyte has that level of power. I think Dillian Whyte's a guy who has to work up to the knockdown. Right? I think Dillian Whyte has to soften you up first. Right? He's not the guy who, first round, second round, bam, you get hit. You know, the guy could miss you, bam, you get hit. And you're as bad off as Povetkin was against Joshua. No, I believe Povetkin against Dillian Whyte has a far greater margin of injury, of error, margin of error. I also feel that because of Povetkin's movement, he's going to take Dillian Whyte's body work out of the equation. Understand, an ambush fighter isn't around long enough for you to find his body. Because the ambush fighter is feinting and threatening to jump in the pocket. Right? You can't set up shop where you're going to go to the guy's body when he enters the pocket. Right? Vladimir Klitschko rarely went to a guy's body. He's like Ali. Right? You have some great heavyweights who almost never hit guys in the body. Vladimir Klitschko was one of them. He was a headhunter. That's one of the reasons, by the way, he loses so badly to Tyson Fury, because Fury's in there moving his head. Right? Anthony Joshua goes to the body more than Vladimir Klitschko does. But Anthony Joshua really couldn't find Povetkin's body. It's a headshot that changes life in that fight. I don't believe Dillian Whyte will be able to find Povetkin's body. I think that takes away a big part of Dillian Whyte's game. I don't think Povetkin's going to be in the pocket long enough for Dillian Whyte to establish the jab with any regularity. Right? Understand too, as heavy a hitter as Vladimir Klitschko was, there was a lot of holding by Klitschko in that Povetkin fight. Right? Povetkin would dive in the pocket, Vladimir Klitschko would hold him. Right? Klitschko did a lot of his damage in that fight by hitting Povetkin on his way into the pocket. That's what that fight came down to. Now, one of the reasons why this line might be what it is, right? Povetkin getting greater than 3-to-1 odds, you got to be kidding me, is because Povetkin's last fight went the distance against Michael Hunter, who's viewed as a smaller heavyweight. Right? And, of course, there's Povetkin's age. You look at the stats on this fight and you see a guy who's 40 years old. Can we even say that out loud? And you're thinking, come on, man. You know, this guy is now fighting the draws and he's older. Let me just remind people, this is the heavyweight division. You know Dwyer's rule of relativity. Heavyweights age more slowly. Right? I saw Povetkin against Michael Hunter. He moved well. He still had the legs. He still had the power. He really had to perform well late in that fight, because I thought whoever won or lost that fight was still in the air. That was a tough fight. No one got a gift in that fight. And he showed stamina. Now, let me say this about Michael Hunter, and I know the world's upside down when I say stuff like this. Hunter is a real threat to the crown. He's a serious threat to the crown. People need to realize that, because he's one of the most agile heavyweights out there. Right? The guys who give the heavyweight champ, and let's face it, I know multiple people hold the title. There's only one heavyweight champ out there, and it's Tyson Fury. This reminds me of when they tried to tell us that there was some other champ out there other than Larry Holmes. Come on, you know who the heavyweight champ is. It's not the guy who got dropped several times by Andy Ruiz. Right? It's not the guy who found a way not to fight Wilder, not to fight Fury, and not to give Dillian Whyte a rematch while talking about fighting Wilder, Fury, and Dillian Whyte. That's not the heavyweight champion. There's only one, folks. You know who the best is in the heavyweight division. Now, I know there's a group of you out there who disagree with me. This is an interactive forum. This is a participatory forum. Give us your arguments in the comment section of this video. But there's only one guy who beat Vladimir Klitschko when Vladimir Klitschko was champion. There's only one guy who beat Deontay Wilder at any time. Right? At any time. There's only one guy who was the lineal and who has not lost since. And that's Tyson Fury. And let me just say this about Tyson Fury. The world's upside down. And I know there's a John McDermott crowd out there, and I'll concede. That fight's troublesome. Right? That fight's troublesome. Right? But the bottom line is, the fighters who give Fury the hardest time are the smaller, coordinated, quicker guys. That's who Michael Hunter is. Right? The Povetkin fight is an excellent fight just to look at styles. Hunter is extremely hard to fight in the ring. You want to see a good Hunter fight? He lost it. But it was a great Hunter fight. It's Hunter against Usyk. In other words, as you look at the Michael Hunter career, he's been in the ring with major talents. Against Usyk, Hunter is lasting for several rounds. Usyk had a hard time finding Hunter. Right here you had Povetkin, the bigger fighter. He looks bigger than Hunter. And when Povetkin would come in to throw combinations, Hunter has a back foot. Hunter would move backwards. Right? Hunter's a guy who could move over by the ropes. You throw punches, he makes you miss. He makes you look silly. Hunter can operate. In fact, this is his game. He can operate without a pocket. I don't believe you can look at the Povetkin-Hunter fight and reach the conclusion that Povetkin's washed up or that Dillian Whyte will be able to operate without a pocket like Michael Hunter did. It's because Hunter is underrated. We're so accustomed to seeing the giants out there, right? Guys 6'6" and taller. Right? The Fury, the Wilder, the Joshua. This is a big man era. That we don't seem to realize that Sonny Liston himself was less than 6'1". Right? We need to get out of that big man mindset. Hunter had an element of movement that gave Povetkin problems. Dillian Whyte, who can be up on his toes. That amateur film that's going around YouTube where Dillian Whyte drops Anthony Joshua, Dillian Whyte's up on his toes in that fight. But Dillian Whyte today isn't in shape enough to do that as a pro for 12 rounds. You know, that's not his game. So I've been expecting a mover to give Dillian Whyte problems. I was wrong. Full confession here. About the Dillian Whyte-Lucas Browne fight. I know there's a Dillian Whyte group out there that feels I'm anti-Dillian Whyte. Right? Let me say further. I was wrong. About the Dillian Whyte-Joseph Parker fight. Let me point out, though, that Parker gets jobbed in that fight. Right? One of the knockdowns isn't even a punch. Understand, when a guy hits you with a part of his body, that's not a hand. Even though it's not a punch, you get hit with something and you go down, you're still hurt. It's up to the referee to say, hey, whoa, we can't call that as a knockdown. Had they officiated that Joseph Parker fight correctly, the outcome could have been different. Let's face it, too, at the end of the fight, Dillian Whyte barely survives that fight. Right? The Lucas Browne fight, if Lucas Browne shows up in shape, if he shows up as prime Lucas Browne, that fight might have been different. Lucas Browne showed up in worse shape than Dillian Whyte. Right now, for the record, Whyte's masterful in that fight. The jab is popping. But let's be clear, that's not the Lucas Browne who fought James Toney. Right? Lucas Browne seems to have missed training camp before he fought Dillian Whyte, in my opinion. That's a lethargic, sluggish Lucas Browne who can't move, who's a sitting duck for Dillian Whyte's jab. Right? I believe Povetkin, at 40, who's only lost to Klitschko and Joshua in a multi-year career. Right? This is an Olympic gold medalist. This is a guy who held the heavyweight title at one point. Right? I should say a man who held a heavyweight title. We knew back then that the real champ was Vladimir Klitschko. Right? As I said, most of the time in the heavyweight division, there's only one champ. Well, let me just say, I believe Povetkin is going to show up in great shape. As David Price knows, Povetkin can punch. I'll agree, Povetkin's defense has slipped a little bit. He does get hit by Price. He does get hit by Hunter. Right? A couple of recent fights he had. He certainly got hit by Anthony Joshua. I'll agree with all of that criticism. But I believe he shows up in shape, and all I'm saying is, if you're going to tell me in this evenly matched fight, right, both guys have a chance to win it outright. The younger man certainly does. He has a great jab. In my opinion, the older man certainly does. He moves better than the younger man. If you're going to give me 3-to-1 odds on this fight. No need to put a bow on the package. Wrap it up, I'll take it. The bet I'm recommending is Povetkin to win. We want a taste of the long odds. Right? As I said, and I admit it, I'm biased toward underdogs. Competitive underdogs. The bet I like is Povetkin to win the fight, hedged with the over whatever it is. This is not going to be a quick fight. This is not going to be a fight where the younger man comes out and finds and destroys the older man. You have to find the KG vet first in this fight. Right? He's going to have to find Povetkin. Povetkin's not going to allow a pocket to be set up. Finding Povetkin won't be as easy as just being in the pocket, throwing a jab a few times, having that jab land, softening up the guy. Povetkin not only has head movement, he has body movement. He moves around the ring. Right? Even when he looked out of gas against Michael Hunter, he was able to go a few more rounds. He was able to make it the distance in that fight. I also question Dillian Whyte's ability to run after him. Dillian Whyte can't force the issue. Dillian Whyte needs to fight within his construct. He can't go outside of it. Right? So, I'm expecting a competitive fight that goes several rounds. I think either man can win. The way I'm playing it is by taking Povetkin to win the fight at a plus 310, which are the odds right now as I make this video on March the 31st. Hedged with the over. That's how I see it. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Let me know what that opinion is in the comment section of this video. Thanks for stopping by.